Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shireen. On the top story tonight, the government has announced 12 new measures to the tune of 1.2 lakh crore rupees to bolster the recovery. As CNBC-TV18 has been reporting, these measures are targeted at hand-holding key stress sectors of the economy through revival. These include a new version of the Emergency Credit Guarantee Scheme. So this is the 2.0 version for companies with dues between 50 to 500 crore rupees. Many restrictions, including an upper ceiling on turnover, have now been done away with. Then there is some income tax relief for the real estate sector. The government has doubled the differential between circle rate and the agreement value to 20% for units of up to 2 crore rupees. So when a property is sold at below the circle rate, the lower value will be considered for the income tax calculation for both the buyer and the seller, as long as the difference is 20% or lower. Now, this is expected to help developers get rid of inventory and make buying affordable homes more attractive. Listen in to the Finance Minister.
The Emergency Credit Line Guarantee Scheme, which was announced in the Atmanirbhar 1.0, gets extended till 31st March 2021. You probably also were informed that from October, it was extended till 30th November. Devashish is here, he can correct me. From October to, it was extended by 1 month to reach 30th November as the deadline for the ECLGS scheme. But now we are extending it up to 31st March 2021. So at the moment, what is prevailing is the differential between circle rate and the agreement value. About 10%. Prices may be lower than that, but up to 10% you get relief. Now what we've decided is to increase the differential from 10% to 20% from the period, for the period from the date of this announcement to 30th June 2021 for only primary sales, so the first sale of residential units of value up to 2 crores.
Well, those are some of the key measures as part of that 12 list of measures announced by the government. Now, with this third installment of the Atmanirbhar Bharat package, the government has committed 29.87 lakh crore rupees towards the stimulus measures. This includes the 12.7 lakh crore rupees that have come in as measures announced by the Reserve Bank of India till the 31st of October and the 1.45 lakh crore rupees allocated towards expanding the production-linked incentive scheme to 10 new sectors. So, of the 1.2 lakh rupees stimulus measures announced today, what kind of fiscal impact is the government actually looking at? Sapna joins us now with the fine print. Sapna, take us through the math.
Well, what needs to be kept in mind is the fact that the fiscal aspect or the fiscal impact of these stimulus announcements, the total cost is around 2.65 lakh odd crore, but out of this, the manufacturing PLI alone would be 1.46 lakh crore. And the point here is that this money is not going to be spent anytime soon. The PLI schemes, the individual schemes will have their own life and they'll have their own cycle, and none of that money is going to be spent at least in the current financial year. So once you pull 1.46 lakh crore out of this 2.65 lakh crore, what you're left with is a 1.20 lakh crore of balance, out of which the lion's share has been taken by the fertilizer subsidy, 65,000 crores. And we're given to understand that this would now probably take care of all the carry forward liabilities that the fertilizer companies had been facing. The earlier area payments probably are now being cleared. We also given to understand that probably the Department of Fertilizers had asked for around 1.38 odd lakh crores when the RE was being decided in the last financial year, out of which 73,000 crores came through in this year's budget, and now the remaining part is being fulfilled by the government. So going forward, probably the fertilizer industry is going to be on a clean slate, and to an extent at least this carry forward liability has been taken care of. So that's a positive. Very quickly, the other things that you're left with, of course, would be this 18,000 odd crores for Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Urban. Here also we are given to understand that probably this could also be an area payment. There could be, a bigger number of areas as far as this particular scheme is concerned. And this could be a combination of some additionality being done by the government as well as extra budgetary resources which companies like HUDCO may have to raise. 10,000 crores apart from this for Manrega, that's a straight cash spent by the government. 10,000 odd crores for industrial incentives, and of course 6,000 odd crores for the EPF scheme, but that is going to be over the next 2 odd years.
Well, thanks very much for explaining the math of that 1.2 lakh crore rupees. Those are the measures announced by the government today. Satna, appreciate your time. Now, India Inc. has given a thumbs up to the government's latest move, calling it a powerful multi-sector stimulus. Sanjiv Bajaj of Bajaj Finance says the government's focus is on lending more support to the economy. Keki Mistry of HDFC believes a large number of people will be covered by the real estate relief announced by the government today. Take a look.
It's very clearly from the government side a focus to get a broad level upward, I would say, support to the economy. Let's keep in mind that a whole bunch of initiatives that right from Atmanirbhar 1 that the government has taken has really been to take care of the current situation.
20% is a decent number. It's certainly a big jump from the 10% which was existing earlier. So it should help, to my mind, most projects. Okay. However, the limit of 2 crores may make it, may not make it so attractive for a place like Mumbai or Delhi where prices are high.
In my view, the mood will change, particularly for boost to manufacturing in the form of PLI scheme, production linked incentive scheme, to 10 champion sectors, I think is a transformational measure. So it will not only reduce imports, but also potential industries can do exports and meet the domestic demand. So this will definitely change the mood of the manufacturing sector.
It's definitely a powerful multi-sectorial positive boost. I think the government continues to be creative and stay on track in terms of boosting the economy. Employment aspect of the entire thing, which was something that Fiscal had continued to speak to the government about, I believe has a benefit, because not only will it make people think twice about releasing existing employees or letting go of people, but also it is a certain incentive to employment generation or to provide incentive.
While India Inc. reacting to the measures announced by the government. Now, these stimulus measures have come just days ahead of Diwali, which is, of course, one of the biggest festivals and probably the most crucial period for the economy, which is attempting to bounce back from the COVID-19 jolt. So the effort is to try and boost demand and consumption. But what is the mood across India Inc.? Now, CNBC-TV18 in partnership with CII conducted a poll among 303 CEOs to gauge the pulse of businesses. Majority of these CEOs run small and medium enterprises. And here are the key findings. Now, remember, this poll was done before today's announcements came in. A majority, 52% of the CEOs polled, say the economic recovery in India is well entrenched, but 48% seem to think otherwise. Only 25% believe that the recovery has been above expectations, and 35% say it's been below expectations. A majority of nearly 40% said the recovery is in line with expectations. Now, what will all of this mean for hiring? A majority, 70%, are in wait and watch mode. Only 24% of the CEOs polled are upbeat about hiring. And finally, will India Inc. provide free COVID vaccines or subsidize COVID vaccines for employees? Over 32% said yes, and nearly 49% say they intend to subsidize the cost of the vaccine for employees. Those are just some of the highlights of that big poll that we've done, and you can catch more details and a special discussion on the mood of India Inc. at 9:30 p.m. right here on CNBC-TV18. Well, let's talk about the markets now. The equity market rally prompted by hopes of a COVID vaccine has paused, so some profit-taking. The Nifty and the Sensex snapping an 8-day gaining streak, ending 0.5% lower. Mid-caps outperformed the benchmarks, while the Nifty Bank saw the biggest cuts. Meanwhile, Goldman Sachs has turned bullish on India on hopes of a rebound in corporate earnings and a revival in economic growth. It has upgraded India to overweight and revised the Nifty target to 14,100 by the end of 2021. So that's the big call there from Goldman Sachs. On to the macros now. Retail inflation rises to 7.6% in October, hitting a 9-month high as prices of pulses and vegetables soar. Inflation output has moved out of contraction zone, but it continues to remain flat at 0.2% for the month gone by. Latha joins us now with the details. Latha, inflation, that clearly is the cause for worry.
Yes, the CPI number is extremely uncomfortable, and at 7.6, it actually means that for the past year almost, inflation levels have been above 6%, and now the market is veering around to the view that we cannot have any more rate cuts in this cycle. The internals are also disturbing. It's basically because of food inflation, which is now running at 11%. Last month it was 10.68. Last month is September. And the fear now is that it will become a generalized inflation. That is, from food, because food is expensive. Other things also start getting expensive. And we can see that in the core inflation. Core inflation is standing at 5.8%. Core is largely services, what you pay for doctors, what you pay for education, tuition teachers, or recreation. That core inflation, services which can't be imported, that is also running at 5.8. Within food, the biggest problem is protein. So egg, meat, pulses, all of them are running, 18, 20%. But the worst, what has come higher than expected, is vegetables. That's running at 22.5%. The expectation was that come October, it will start receding a bit. But now everyone is hopeful that by November, December, we should see vegetable prices easing. But no one is expecting inflation to go below 5% even by March. So a bit of a worry that you can't have interest rates at 3.35% when the least you are expecting is 5%, and the current inflation number is double the overnight rate of 3.35. IIP for September, it's a lagged number. We already have a lot of indicators, auto sales and core sector, power, etc. for October. So this is a lagged number, but there's something positive about it. It's plus 0.2. And if you looked at the April-September number, 6 months, then that is minus 21. So we have come a long way. That September is very good. And it's only manufacturing that's still dragging. Mining and electricity have done very well, electricity especially at 5%. So not much of a complaint as far as IIP goes.
All right, many thanks, Latha. That's the situation there. With inflation being on that trajectory, whether or not we can see any more rate cuts, the opinion now seems to be very clear. It's unlikely. But let's take a look at the other headlines we're tracking. Ratings agency Moody's has revised India's GDP forecast for 2020, predicting a contraction of 8.9% against the earlier forecast of a 9.6% contraction. Moody's also expects the Indian economy to grow at 8.6% next year. India reports a drop in active COVID cases for the 40th day in a row, taking the tally to below 4.9 lakh. Recoveries increased by more than 50,000 for the second day in a row. 550 deaths have been reported in the last 24 hours up to 8 a.m. this morning. The Delhi High Court allows the state government to reserve 80% beds in intensive care units of 33 private hospitals for COVID-19 patients. The High Court says the situation in the national capital is dynamic and the Kejriwal government must keep its finger on the pulse to be able to cope with the situation. Serum Institute and ICMR complete the enrollment for the third phase of clinical trials for Oxford's Covishield in India. Serum says it has already manufactured 40 million doses of the COVID vaccine. Government announces a 900 crore rupee grant for research and development for Indian vaccines. Well, time now for a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. As many as 6 suitors have thrown their hat in the ring to acquire debt-ridden DHFL's stake in Pramerica Life Insurance, which was put on the block by lenders to recover dues. Ritu Singh, who's been tracking that story, joins us now with more details. Ritu, some interesting names there.
DHFL's lenders have received at least 6 expressions of interest to acquire DHFL's stake in Pramerica Life Insurance Company Limited, which was earlier known as DHFL Pramerica Life Insurance. Pramerica, remember, is a joint venture between DHFL's wholly owned subsidiary, DHFL Investments Limited, and Prudential, where DHFL owns about 50% stake via DIL and another 1% through another promoter entity, and the remaining 49% stake is held by Prudential. Now, we've been given to understand that these expressions of interest have come from Vijay Shekhar's Paytm, from Sachin Bansal's Navi Technologies, Oak Tree Capital and Piramal Group, which have also separately submitted bids to acquire DHFL under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. And 2 other little-known UK-based companies have also shown an interest in acquiring DHFL's stake in this life insurance venture. Now, this, as I said, is not going to be part of the overall insolvency case, which is running in parallel, but the recoveries lenders make through this will be added to the total recoveries, where, remember, DHFL is facing claims of over 87,000 crores, and through the sale of this insurance venture alone, banks are hopeful of recovering anywhere between 700 and 800 crore rupees.
Ritu, many thanks. That is a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. Watch that space. Let's take a look at the day's earnings now. Eicher Motors saw its second quarter net profit drop 40% annually to come in below street estimates. Revenue, though, topped expectations at over 2,130 crores. Operating profit as well as margins also higher than estimates. Grasim standalone net profit beat expectations despite falling close to a 32% year-on-year to 360 crore rupees. Standalone revenue dropped 28% and EBITDA falls by 40%. The company also approves the sale of its fertilizer operations to Indorama for a little over 2,600 crores. Jubilant FoodWorks tops estimates on most parameters. Net profit ahead of expectations with a 1.3% jump compared year-on-year. Operating profit and margins also beat the street. Revenue, however, comes in below the CNBC-TV18 poll, falling 18.5% to 805 crores. Well, we will head into a break, but up next we have a special report from Mumbai's Dharavi, where the potter market is seeing a lackluster Diwali this year. Now, some of the national headlines. After failing to defeat the NDA in Bihar, RJ leader Tejasvi Yadav demands a recount in 20 seats where the victory margin is wafer thin. The 31-year-old claims Prime Minister Modi and Chief Minister Nitish Kumar could not stop the RJD from becoming the single largest party. Bihar Chief Minister Nitish Kumar says leaders of four parties comprising the National Democratic Alliance will meet on Friday to decide on who will become the next Chief Minister. Says he has not made a claim to the post, adds that a decision on the timing of the oath-taking ceremony will also be decided then. The Bombay High Court has denied bail to Telugu poet and writer Varavara Rao once again in connection with the Elgar Parishad case. The 81-year-old's wife had argued that he is in no condition to flee as he is bedridden with an infection. In international news, pro-democracy lawmakers in Hong Kong have resigned en masse. This after 4 members were disqualified using a law passed in mainland China that has the powers to bypass the courts in Hong Kong. Reports suggest Chinese officials could face fresh US sanctions over the decision. Dharavi's Kumbharwada, well known for producing colourful festive pots and handmade diyas both for domestic and export markets, is seeing a lackluster Diwali. Substantial drop in demand induced by the fear of coronavirus and the lockdown coupled with a sharp rise in raw material costs has pushed this community of potters to the brink. Archana Shukla has more.
मांगता उतना बिक्री नहीं हो रही है।
4 months ago, when I had come to the pottery market here in Dharavi, in Mumbai, it wore a deserted look. The shops were closed, the business was completely down. Even when, post the lockdown, things started, shops started opening up, and shopkeepers were angry, both because of the fear of the virus and of the stigma attached to a place like Dharavi. Businesses were not operating.
The festive season has brought some life back to Dharavi's Kumbharwada, which supplies diyas or earthen lamps across the country. But sales are still just 50% of a normal year.
50% कम हो गए क्योंकि पहला एक्सपोर्ट तो गया, कॉर्पोरेट गया, ये साल कोई नहीं आया है। सब जो इलेक्शन वाला रहता है वो बांटने वाला, वो उससे भी बांटा नहीं है कुछ। हम लोग पूरा साल मेहनत करता है, इसमें करीबन 3-4 हज़ार पब्लिक ये दिए के अंदर काम करती है। जो एक का ही ग्रुप रहता है वो, ये दीपावली का मेन सीजन रहता है, उसमें करोड़ों का हिसाब से पंती बनाते हैं हम लोग, तो वो हिसाब से सेलिंग नहीं है। पहले पब्लिक एक बार आके एक बार में स्टॉक करते थे, अभी पब्लिक 2-2 दिन में आके वो माल का स्टॉक करके लेके जाती है। मतलब उसका बिक्री होता है तो वो हमसे माल लेके जाती है।
पहला होता था हम लोग का बिक्री ऐसा उतना ही 25 या 30 मिलता था। अभी ये साल में क्या होएगा क्या नहीं होएगा।
25-30 हज़ार रुपये मिलता था, अभी इस साल क्या लग रहा है?
अभी ये साल में 2-3 हज़ार का ही भर के लेके जा रहा है।
ट्रेन भी बंद है, अभी आना बहुत मुश्किल हो रहा है। अभी टैक्सी वाला भी बहुत भाड़ा ले रहा है, अभी हमारा खर्चा भी बहुत हो रहा है, इसलिए ट्रेन चालू करने बोल रहे हैं।
Lack of public transport is one big challenge that most small businesses, roadside vendors are facing.
60 रुपये में आ जाते थे, 30 रुपये में। अभी इधर से कितना 400 रुपये आने में लगा है, 1000 रुपये जाने में लगेगा, सब 1400 रुपये पड़ जाएगा। ऐसे कितना मेरा 60 रुपये में 100 रुपये में आना जाना सब दोनों हो जाता था। इस वजह से हम नहीं ले रहे, पता नहीं लॉकडाउन है लेगा कि नहीं लेगा। दूसरी बात है कि पब्लिक भी कम है।
अच्छा।
और महंगाई है, पैसे भी नहीं है।
अच्छा।
इस वजह से लेकिन लेके जा रहे हैं तो ऊपर वाला है।
मतलब आपको ये डर है कि आपका कस्टमर महंगा वाला आइटम खरीदेगा कि नहीं?
हाँ।
Shopkeepers here are telling us that corporate gifts used to be a big chunk of what they did during Diwali, but that has substantially come down.
Sell products worth not less than 7 to 8 lakhs.
Okay.
Yeah, as
Just
an
during
NGO.
Diwali.
Yeah, as an NGO. But this year, it's not even in thousands still.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's that bad.
That's not good news for the nearly 2,000 Potter families who live in these congested bylanes of Dharavi slums and depend on Diwali sales.
घर में सब माल पड़ा है, कोई धंधा बंधा नहीं, घर में तकलीफ बहुत है। आका साल गया अभी लॉकडाउन में, कुछ कमाई ही नहीं है।
अच्छा, अभी भी
पूरा बंद ही था पूरा।
अभी भी कर्जा लिया आपने?
हाँ, तो अभी भी ऐसे ही पड़ा है, कोई देने वाला तो नहीं है, सवाल ही नहीं। अभी भट्टी वाले को तो सब रोकड़ा देना पड़ेगा, जलाने का कपड़ा सबका।
The worst hit have been the traditional potters, who are battling spikes in input costs and dismal demand in this otherwise dying trade of their making.
जो मिल था गुजरात चला गया, मिट्टी है गुजरात से आता है, अब लोगों को महंगा पड़ता है सब। बम्बई में भी जगह ही नहीं है, तो बाहर से माता हम लोग महंगा पड़ता है मटेरियल, इसलिए इसमें कुछ प्रॉफिट भी है ही नहीं।
प्रॉफिट नहीं है इसमें।
अभी हम लोग करता है लेकिन बच्चे लोग नहीं करेगा ये।
The diya makers here in Dharavi, the families who actually make diyas to light up Diwali for everyone else, are facing a very dire situation, particularly this year. While the business of diya making is actually going down for people like Manji, this year has been extremely tough because raw material prices has actually gone up 80%, but the costs of diyas have not. And in fact, people are buying less. Like Manji was pointing out, the revival, particularly for this class of diya makers, is going to be a very tough ride. With camera person Bharat Kori and Deepak Jangle, this is Archana Shukla here in Dharavi.
Well, we hope that things improve for the potters there in Dharavi, and we hope that there is a pickup in demand. Well, 2 days to go for Diwali, but with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching. Stay tuned. The news and updates will continue here on CNBC TV.